And we got Alexis in the house, which is so
Yay!
exciting. Oh, yeah, I got a chance to have a little one-on-one yesterday with sweet Alexis, which I loved. Here comes Jan. Oh my goodness, it's going to be such a fun conversation today. Meeting is now streaming. Yes, it is. That's great. Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Welcome to Tuesday training for practitioners. I love this time that we share together. And Lori, the more you post about it, the more excited I get. She keeps saying it's one of your favorites. And I'm like, yeah, it's my favorite too. So like your energy is exciting me and my energy is growing too, which I love. So welcome for those of you who are here for the first time. I'm so delighted that you're joining us. And if you've been back a million times, equally glad you're joining us. I am Gina Schatz. I am your host and your trainer for today. We meet on Tuesdays with as cohorts, that's the word I wanted, cohorts. In the world of practitioner land, both movement and manual practitioners all get to meet. We get to talk about client work, anatomy, and everything in between. It's really not anything in between because that's like the whole kit and caboodle. So here we are. Hi, welcome back. When we were here we weren't here last week actually, because we were at an amazing 3-day anatomy party, also known as a summit, which was super fun. And it landed right smack dab in the middle of Tuesday training. So I'm hopeful that all of you who are tuning in here for Tuesday training were also at the summit last week instead of being here on YouTube where we weren't. And yes, Lori was there as one of our anatomy advocates, loving all of the generosity and service pouring out of our anatomy advocacy team. Thank you for being here live again, Lori. I love it. 2 weeks ago, though, as we met for Tuesday training, we were in some juicy talk about some client work and some referral patterns. And we didn't identify them as referral patterns until midway through the conversation, which was super fun. And I feel like we could have gone on a little bit more even with that case study, truthfully. And that is my experience with case studies. We can go on and on and on and on and on and on about them. And as some of the mastery practitioners are wrapping up their year-long trek, we're also in case studies, and it just keeps coming up that like, yes, this is what we're here for, the work, the client work, like getting it done. So I want to talk about another aspect of that, sort of what we were leaving off with 2 weeks ago, and also something that came up during the summit. And Lori, you even brought it up earlier today in our practitioner inner circle, which I thought, wow, okay, it just keeps happening where I think something and all of the pieces just line up as if my thoughts create my reality. Oh, wait, they do. Be really thoughtful about my thoughts. So, Lori, do you remember by chance what you said this morning to the inner circle? Do you remember what
I did? Was it about using my voice?
Before that?
Before that, about how, what did I?
Was it before or after? It was in that same conversation. Mm-hmm.
Was it something I don't quite remember, but if I know me, it was probably something about was it something about being hesitant about what I know?
You were in that conversation, and as you started talking about client work, you were talking about maybe we're hesitant sometimes as practitioners, and that we get to speak up and be courageous and be, willing to be a little messy. I said, be willing to get it wrong at first.
Oh, yeah.
And then there was like the piece that put it all together.
Oh, I said that?
You did. There was another.
I can't believe I can't, when you're riffing, you're like.
Yeah, you were riffing all the good stuff. You talked about listening.
Oh.
Right? Like listening to the client's body, to what's in front of you, to what they're presenting. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah. That came up this morning also. You know what I loved last week, and I'll digress just a little bit, is looking at our clients that we may have seen forever, and they present like this, and to look at them with fresh eyes. Remember a couple of weeks ago, you were saying, reset. Like, yes, we have all this history, and let's look at it differently. Let's look at it as if this was the first time. Yeah, that landed with me.
Yes. Yeah, and I'm not a relationship coach, but isn't that kind of true for all relationships? Like, just don't come with the same story. If you keep repeating the same story, you'll keep getting what you've experienced. And usually when we're like lamenting about a story, it's because it's something that we're wishing would be over. So why keep recreating it? Like, see it fresh, like scrub your eyeballs, scrub your mind and your memory bank, the best of our ability, of course, because this is a recall organ. And just like deep breath, exhale, what do you see? Kind of like what we did in one of our kinesthetic exercises last week. Shake it out, and then you can't see it the same. Same details, same facts, different perspective. So yeah, we get to see our clients with fresh eyes. We get to see, especially when we've been at it for a while with the same client and really wanting results. And I know that so many of you do, because I've said this before, thinking that maybe I would ruffle feathers. And instead what I got back was a whole lot of me too, Gina. And that is, I got kind of bored as a massage therapist. I love giving a good massage. I love how people feel at the end of it. I love how I feel at the end of a good massage. And as a way to keep my being operating and entertained in purpose, not that we get to be entertained, like it's not like our work is supposed to entertain us. I'm not a passive party, but that's the point. I wanted to be proactive in what I was doing in the day, and I really have an active brain. Like I want my mind to be focused on something juicy, because if I don't focus it, it will go off on its own. Like my brain's not any different than anybody else's, right? And so I really wanted something to keep my mind really active. And in full body relaxation massage, that wasn't enough for me. I want it as a modality to exist in the world. I want it in my life every day. But as a practitioner, that repetitiveness grew a little weary on me. And then a lot of you were sharing with me like, yeah, and that's why I started doing like this other kind of massage too. Sometimes I do relaxation and sometimes I do this other thing, but I wasn't always getting results with this other thing. I've had movement practitioners tell me the same thing. I keep coming up with movement practices and sometimes I'm inspired and sometimes I'm not. And it's kind of like the same results, you know, my students, they're still moving their foot in the same way. And it's like a little redundant and a little repetitive. So if you're there, then you're going to love what we talk about today. And if you're not there, listen in anyway, because there may be something good. But the idea really is that, hi, Lynn, it's so good to see you. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. And Jan and Alexis, I want to make sure I also acknowledge you fully too. Thank you for being here. I love that you're here. Good morning. Come on camera or off mute at whatever level works for you. Definitely participate. Type in the chat if you can't talk out loud. It's all good. But I want to get back. I want to get us to this place of like, when we are when the work that we're doing is good, and it is. I know all of you are doing great work. And what you want for the work that you're doing is results. Like you're really hungering for like, I want results. I don't want to do Groundhog's Day with this client. I don't want to do the same session over and over again and have them feel good when they leave, movement or manual, and come back a week later or 2 weeks later. And it's kind of like rinse and repeat. And I used to think, and maybe you did too, I used to think, oh, well, I know this person's body because I know what happened for them when they were not in my presence. And I know what to do for them to restore them back to like feeling really good. And that feels, you know, kind of like, hey, I've been paying attention. It's part of our listening we're going to talk about today. But then it was like the same thing with the same client. And I thought, this is like rinse and repeat. Like, I don't really want that. Does any of you guys still have that? Are you guys thinking like, yeah, I don't want rinse and repeat? Lori's like, yeah, get on with it. Okay, yeah, right, exactly. So here's what I know about that. Amen, Alexis says. Okay, good. So I'm talking about the topic that we're all of hive mind about. Okay, great, I love that. Here's what I know. In order for us to really generate results, it's a two-stage process, if you will. And I don't mean to make either one of them minimal. Obviously, we get to know our stuff, right? We get to know anatomy. You hear me say that all the freaking time. We get to know anatomy. We get to know what our skill level produces, which means you've got to implement that anatomy. You can't just be book smart. You got to actually be willing to mess up or not get it right, or even have Groundhog's Day with a client for a month or two, if that's what it takes, so that you can learn. We talked about last week at the summit, putting yourself in a hive of other practitioners who are absolutely up to the same thing, who are, you know, working at the same level of knowledge and skill set, and encouraging you to continue to do the same. Like, we got to do that. We got to be this anatomy nerd, and we got to implement it for sure. And the other piece about creating results and interrupting the Groundhog's Day repetition is about communication, really. It's about being able to listen. It's about relationships with your own communication style. And so what do I mean by that? Oftentimes when we're wanting a result for somebody, we're kind of like dominating the energy between us and them, whether it's a movement student or a manual student or a manual client or patient. And let me just stop for 1 second and say here that the work that I believe gets to happen for every body is the same whether we're doing movement or manual work, honestly. Like, I know there's a difference between massage therapy and yoga teacher. I'm both. Different, like, entertainment zones for sure, right? And what the body in front of me needs, whether they're coming to me for movement or they're coming to me for manual, is the same. And I really want us to get that. And I think we have. Like, there was a time when I would be teaching and yoga teachers would say, oh, well, I'm not a massage therapist, so I can't really learn from you. Or massage therapists would say, oh, I don't do orthopedic work, I can't really learn from you. Or vice versa. Massage therapists would say, oh, you teach movement? Like, I'm not a yogi. And my point is, it's the same, you guys. It's the same. It's anatomy. It's how the body moves. It's how the body functions. And it's whether we have the skill to intercept that. It's all the same. Okay, so after we have all of that, meaning we are deeply steeped in our practitionership and we know what we're up to and we're, you know, hungering for more and already come loaded and ready, there's this relationship with communication that I really see make the difference for a lot of us. And that is, as I started to say, if we come in with an agenda, which I did for probably maybe 10 years, if I'm honest, as a practitioner, I was like, I know the answer. You got to do blah, blah, blah. And even if I didn't speak like that to my clients, my energy spoke like that, you know, and like, what a way to piss people off. And I'm impassioned. And, you know, my friends would say, oh, Gina, you're just really impassioned. And, you know, I love your energy and so cool. Great. My ego loved that. But that doesn't really land with folks when they're in pain. Right. And so the people that I'm talking about coming to us with discrepancies, and discrepancies usually equal discomfort at a minimum, sometimes real pain. Mostly, like most of the time, discrepancies, functional discrepancies equal grave pain. So we can't really be like, rah, at them with our energy. That's like a communication style, right? Oh, good, Alexis, I'm glad this is landing. And I know you're an instructor too, so I know you get it. The other end of the spectrum is when we come in wanting to be liked, right? Like, oh, I have come on too strong and I don't want to come on too strong. And I don't want to tell them that, wow, their structural alignment that I've assessed is like really askew and I don't want to freak them out. So I'm just going to be a little passive about it. Well, if whatever energy we're putting in the room is the energy that's in the room. So if we're bringing in like this monster energy, someone's feeling attacked. And if we're bringing in passivity and kind of sideways, then we're creating passivity. So we're not really creating engagement with the people that we're working with. Well, that doesn't work because I can't move them. You can't move them. If movement is medicine, we've got to engage them in a way that like inspires them to move, especially as manual practitioners, because movement's got to be part of the mix. And if we're movement practitioners, we get to inspire them to do healthy movement, which might require them slowing down, doing it differently, cross-training, all the things they would be grumbly about. And then they'll trust you too, exactly. So all relationship communication is about building trust for sure. Which leads me to, I'm so glad you dropped the T word, Alexis, which leads me to, we get to trust ourselves. Because if we don't trust ourselves, we show up in all kinds of weird ways when we go to work. we get all kinds of weird ways when we're in other relationships too. Like you said, Lori, we could be nervous, we could hold back, we could babble, or, whatever. Nothing wrong with going on, by the way. But we want to be effective when we're holding the seat of an authority, when we are navigating someone who's come to us with doubt and pain or resistance because they have what they have going on. Not throwing anybody under the bus here. However, runners like to run. You tell a runner they need to stop running because they've torn or injured something, they're not going to stop running. They are resistant. They're like, no, I want what I want. But we all have that in us, even if we're not runners. We want what we want. We come with ideas because we've repeated the same story 1,000 times. We think this is reality instead of that fresh view that we talked about as we started here today. Our clients come with the same thing, right? They've gone over it and over it. They've either seen someone else be hurt or they've been hurt for years, many practitioners before you, and they're telling a story about how they're not going to get better. Anyway, there's resistance in the way, right? So we want to be able to have that authority and confidence to inspire someone out of their resistance and into what's possible for them, which means we can't be timid about that. And we also can't dominate them because that's not a way to inspire. That's dominating. It's different energy, right? And I believe, so how's this landing? Are you guys like, yeah, I kind of get it, or yes, I totally get it. I already worked this. Somewhere in between, maybe news. Okay.
No, it always feels like that fine line. Like you want to be the authority, and then you meet with resistance, and you don't want to and I have a feeling you're going to talk about the middle ground of that.
I love that and you don't even know what I was going to talk about today, Lori. It's like you teed it like we're playing volleyball or something. Like, I got it. Yes, exactly. It's a fine line. And I walked that line for a long time. And this is what I learned. And for those of you who've trained with me before, you've heard me say this. The body is the third person in the room, or the third entity, the third being in the room. The body has something to say. So in ways that I see it get overlooked are like what we talked about 2 weeks ago in practitioner in Tuesday training. And for those of you who weren't there, you're welcome to go back and watch the replay. But we talked about this because it's easy to see the body doing something and then point at the client or student as if it's their personality that's doing it. Instead of the body has its own thing going on. The body has its own interfacing with the universe. The body has its own experience with the chair. Like I might like the upholstery on my chair, the part of me that wants nice things or whatever, and I might find one seat more comfortable than another. And the body also interfaces with that chair. My bony landmarks and my musculature and what's contracting and what's responding. I'm sitting right now in the most horrible posture you could imagine, and I teach this stuff for a living. My ego is totally fine with that. My body is having its own experience with the posture I'm choosing. Body's got something to say too. So when we come into the space with the people that we serve, nervous, we're not listening to the body. We're probably not even listening to the people we're serving, because our nervousness is making us go all kinds of crazy town in our head. Our voice, our internal dialogue can be so loud that we can't hear what the client's saying, and we're definitely not present to be able to take in what the body has to say. So nervousness does that. Lack of confidence does that. Sometimes those aren't quite the same thing. Wanting to be like is not anything like lack of confidence. That's just its whole own, like, it's a selfish agenda, actually. I would love it if my clients like me. I would love it if the whole world liked me. First of all, I logically know that's not possible. And secondly, if I'm making my agenda to be liked, then I'm not doing the work that I'm here to do for someone. I'm in the work of me getting myself liked instead of them getting themselves back to restored function and out of pain. Sometimes it can be the same thing. Sometimes it's not. And that's not even a personality thing. That's the way the nervous system runs, right? For those of you who've trained with me, and we talked about this at the summit too, I think in the green room, maybe afterward, The nervous system is the first thing that you're interfacing with when you work with a client. And that nervous system can only take in so much information while it's processing new information, and the pain that you have, a pain that they've come with. Thanks, Lori, for dropping that in. The nervous system can only process so much. So I even said to somebody that I care for deeply, it was a family friend, and lots of pain, and I was doing some work to support their healing and what they've got going on. And 90 minutes is like max to create lots of structural changes, which is what I do in the work that I do. 2-hour massages, different story. 2-hour yoga classes, different story. But structural changes where the nervous system and the brain has to create neuroplasticity and synapses firing and all the things that are going on there. The nervous system can only do that for so long before it's like, enough, like I can't. And when people are in pain, they hold their breath. They're not breathing deep, parasympathetic, easy breaths. The less oxygen we have, the harder it is for our brain and the quicker it shuts off. I know this. I watched it when my dad was sick. He was not getting enough oxygen in. It was the first time in his entire life I ever saw him be a total asshole to someone. It wasn't the personality, it was the physiology. So we get to know that. We can like point at like, oh, my client's resistant, it's their personality, they know better, blah, blah, blah. Same goes for us. Are you breathing? Are you breathing deeply when you're working with someone, or are you nervous and holding your breath and not giving your brain enough oxygen to think? That's a big piece of what goes on. That's about communication with your own nervous system. That's even separate from, anatomical skill set or movement, like where they should put their leg. That's before you even ask them to move their leg. And as I was starting to say, the friend that I was working with, the family friend that I was working with, we didn't remedy what was going on for that person in 90 minutes. It was a really complicated case. It had been a car accident, hit from several sides, et cetera, et cetera. And at 90 minutes, they were getting frustrated. They were like, they weren't making eye contact with me as much. They were sort of like giving one-word answers. Their nervous system was done. Now, I could have all been in my own ego, like, oh, I want to really make this right for this person and do that dominating thing again and completely override that person's nervous system, which wouldn't have helped them and it wouldn't have created results. Or I could have been all up in my head about like, oh my God, I'm not effective. Maybe I don't know what I'm doing, and been all about me, which isn't even true. Or I could have just taken my knowledge about anatomy and physiology and realized they were done. They were done. I have done my best. And now I get to communicate what happens next without dominating them, without wanting to be liked, or without being sheepish about it. What happens next is we have more to do. This is what we did so far. They know their experience because they were in receipt of it. This is what I saw. And then here's the key piece. This is what the body needs next. Not what my ego hopes you need, not what I'm reminding that I've said 3 times already, because that's just puppeting, but really listening to the body. The body said, I'm done. Body said, I'm done. And the body's also presenting with this restriction, and this restriction. And functionally, I know what's needed to restore that. My knowledge tells me that's what's needed, and the body told me that's what's needed next for that body in that order. So let me see. I think, Alexis, you put in a love note, and I, with touch, they read that energy.
I know I didn't want to interrupt you. As you were speaking, it obviously rings true. And as they are reading that energy, even as soon as you touch them, they're going to, in a sense as well, read that energy. If you're feeling sheepish or scared, or they're just going to pick up on that very quickly. And then so will the body. Those 2 different entities are still going to very quickly, just your energy in the room, like you're saying, it's right on. That's exact.
Yes, so good, Alexis. You tied like 3 Tuesday trainings all together there. Back, because we have talked about the Venn diagram in a few Tuesday trainings where we are working as whole beings, mind, mental energy, emotional energy, and the body. So it's not just, does the shoulder have restrictions in it? It's what's the energy in there and what's my thought about what's in there, right? And the body can be described in lots of iterations of a Venn diagram. That's just the simplest one that I teach from and the simplest one that I share with my clients, and it seems to really land for folks. And we talked a lot about that. The other thing that you said, Alexis, that I love is that as a manual practitioner, we have a little bit more training. No, let's be honest. We have a hell of a lot more training on confidence through touch than movement practitioners have. Like, I know in the world of yoga, there's a lot of emphasis on assisting. And there's also a lot of context and around controversy now around assisting. You should assist, you shouldn't assist. It's up to the student if you assist. It's trauma related if you assist. Trauma related means you should assist. Trauma related means you shouldn't assist. Like, there's all kinds of confusion about touch. And I do think it's confusion. The truth is, touch is healing. It's got to be the right kind of touch at the right time for the right reasons. And what they taught us in massage therapy school is any energy that you have vibing through your being, from your mental space to your confidence and everything in between, is absolutely picked up in your hands.
Absolutely.
100%.
I actually, when I teach yoga teacher training for the teachers, I do start at the beginning in 200 and say, don't touch your client unless you ask them. And when you show up clean. You don't bring bad energy. Don't touch somebody with your rough morning that you had maybe with your dogs and your husband at home or whatever. And maybe you rushed to get there and you're scurried, or you're flustered in some way, or you have something running through you're touching them. You need to be wusa. Very, very, very clean is what I say, so that because they'll vibe on whatever you're bringing to that, and touching them will just ooze through it.
For sure.
And if they're suffering trauma, right? Like, if there is things like that, your confidence is one thing, like you said, even with ego. I totally agree. I'm vibing with you, girl, vibing.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah. And sympathetic energy and parasympathetic energy are very different. And we can be running habitually on sympathetic energy and not knowing the difference. And that is why I teach the nervous system so much in a lot of the courses that we use as foundational training here. And the way I explain the energy that really gets practitioners who don't already know this to how I get it to land is I use the example. If you were to walk into a room where two people had just wrapped up or stopped a really bad fight, and they heard you or saw you coming in and they piped it, if you walked in the room, you would feel the energy from that fight, even if you never heard a word, wouldn't you? Like, we would, right? And the reason we would pick up that energy is because we're energy beings, and so are they. So that is like how we know that energy is felt, even when we're not touching. When we do hands-on, magnify it times 1,000 at a minimum. Because you can be happy grab-assing, but your energy is palpable. No matter what your face is saying, your energy is palpable. And when you touch someone and you actually create physical contact, it amplifies that. So if we're not confident, or if we're wanting an agenda, like to be liked or to get our client to do something like homework, that energy of domination or manipulation is also felt. Just like lack of confidence is felt. It feels like tremoring hands. It feels like your hands are doing this when you're not confident. Even if your hands are not moving, it feels like that energetically to the nervous system and all the receptors that take all that in. So it really matters for us to get confident. And confidence is a really easy formula. It's competence. It's knowledge and practice. That's how you build confidence. And then we get to listen. And so that was the extra piece I wanted to bring in today, that we get to listen and acknowledge the body is not speaking in full sentences. And its message is loud, as if it is. So for those of you who have creatures at home that you care for, dogs and cats, they don't speak English either, but they're communicating. You know when they're hungry, you know when they need to go out, you know when they want cuddles. They communicate. The body communicates too. Maybe not like a dog or a cat, but the body's communicating too. And so what's it saying? Right? And so we're going to go over a lot of this actually in our boot camp tomorrow. But there's examples that I've just heard this week as I've had so much fun talking to so many practitioners this week, one-on-one. I love getting into the nitty-gritty instead of just talking at you. I love like, what's it going on and what are your specific questions? And I just really dig that, which leads me to please ask specific questions while we're here on Tuesdays. I really love to be able to serve you in that way. And some of the things that I heard this week are, I know I do really good work and I've been studying my face off for a long time. And sometimes my clients feel worse at the end of a session. And I feel like I did everything I knew to do. How many of you have had that? Like your clients feel worse afterward. You're like, oh God, I thought I had it. I thought I had my routine down, either my movement class or my manual class or manual session. So that has come up. There's a reason for that. And it's because we're missing something that the body is saying. There's also, how many of you have had instances where you were really focused on one part of the body's mechanics? And thanks, Lori, for dropping that in. Yeah, come join us at the boot camp. If what I'm sharing with you is like, yeah, I want to know more about that, come, that's what we're talking about. How many of you have had sessions with a client where they came in with a particular something and you were like, I got it. Here's my confidence. You're like, I built it. I got confidence. I know what I'm doing and I've practiced what I'm doing. I know I can help this client. And you go in and you help them and it works and they feel better and you feel better and the pain is gone and their function is restored and everybody's happy. And then oddly, they point to another random part of their body. Like you've been working on their low back and their hips, or you've been working on their knee and their ankle, and then randomly their opposite side elbow feels like it's gonna crack or something. Or you've been working on their lower extremities and stabilizing their sacrum. I hope you're all doing that. And then all of a sudden they tell you that they went to go pull out of your parking lot and they couldn't turn their head, but only in one direction. It didn't hurt, but it just felt restricted. How many of you guys have had like weird bits of feedback like that? And you're like, okay. And how many of you are tempted to kind of brush that off and be like, huh, weird, I hope that goes away. But you work more globally. That's all right, Alexis, for sure. Maybe you will work more locally, who knows? Yeah, sometimes we are kind of like, but we're like in the celebration of like what we did and what we created for someone. Absolutely celebrate that. That's what you're here for. That's your purpose on the planet. And I celebrate you. And the piece that I want to invite us into today is the body is talking when that happens. So we don't really want to like combat our nervousness and our insecurity by like being, I don't want to think about that. I'm going to just pretend that didn't happen and like kind of shrug it off. And we also don't want to get super down about how we failed and then back to us again. It's not about us. The body is just participating. Like I say this to my clients, I'm kind of glad your body's given us such clarity. So neither one of us has to guess. I'm kind of glad your body's responding the way it is instead of giving up and being passive about it. I'm kind of glad your body's participating actually to this level and kind of talking louder than even I thought through what we were going to do next. So cool, because I've got all the knowledge and I've got all the skill. All you got to do is tell me what needs to happen and I'm the doer. I got it. The body is telling you. Body is telling you. There's reasons for that. So what we're going to do in the boot camp is we're going to trace some of those things. Like how does working on the knee and ankle suddenly create an elbow click? Or how does stabilizing the sacrum suddenly create restriction in the neck or shoulder? Or any of those pieces. It's not just one equals the other. Like weird places. How does that happen? There's a way that that happens, which goes back to our knowledge of functional anatomy. So I know functional was a word that we brought up last week a whole lot. And one of our guests was like, don't use that word. I use the word because it means the way the body is designed to move and the moving and how efficient that moving is. So and then I know the word efficient was brought up on the chopping block too, but that's how I describe it. It's how I describe it to my clients and they kind of get it. We're all designed perfectly with imperfections, by the way, and our body is taking care of that. It's made to be that way. So perfection's not a real thing. Perfectly imperfect, though, is a real thing. It's how we're designed. And we're all designed to move. The body's not designed to be a couch potato for too long. I mean, there's systems at play where you could, binge Netflix or something if there's a good show. I just did that, thankfully. There was only 6 seasons of it. 6 episodes, I should say, not 6 seasons, 6 episodes. So when there's 6 seasons and you're binging, different story. Not that I'm putting a qualifier on how long we should lounge. The point is, we're not really designed for that. If we were designed for that, we wouldn't have hinge joints and 360 joints in the body. We're designed to move it, for sure. And when movement is painful, something's awry. The way that we create results on that is knowing exactly how we're designed and knowing exactly how optimized movement happens, identifying through our assessment skills when something's not optimal, and having the skill set to restore it back to how it was designed. That's a 3-step process. Should happen like that if that's what you're up to, creating, orthopedic results for folks. But that's what has to happen. Starting orthopedically on just what the problem is without a strong knowledge of functional anatomy makes it harder, makes it a lot harder. And those are the practitioners that typically want like a checkbox. If somebody has this, what do I do? Those are the questions. If somebody comes in with a herniated disc, what do I do? If somebody has a knee surgery, knee replacement surgery, what do I do? That's going to like what the dysfunction is and wanting a checked answer for that. Not how it works. It's not how it works. And on the other hand, I've also heard yoga teachers take this way far out of context. Everybody's different. Do not like the checkbox. Checkbox. There's no matrix. There's no matrix. It's not how we're designed. Yoga teachers and movement practitioners, but yogis are the ones I have spent the most time with in their training opportunity, tend to take the we're all unique and different a little too far. In fact, I was a dancer for a long, long time before I was ever a yoga teacher. And I used to train dancers and we'd perform, and it was actually fun to be a traveling performing dancer. And I remember a couple times even the dancers would say, I can't do what you're asking me to do, meaning a functional movement in their body. All bodies are different. And yes, we're all different, absolutely. And yes, all injuries are different because of the history and the rehab and everything in between. And there is this base of how we're all designed, the optimal function that most of us should readily have available to us. And we need to know where that is to know if we get to push, if you will, or invite and re-inspire a client or a student, movement or manual, to restore themselves back to the pain-free place. We need to know where that is. And at the same time, hold that everyone's slightly different in the way they navigate pain and dysfunction. So we don't want to say everybody's different and I should never have to do what you're asking me to do because I'm not you. It's a little too far. And everybody should be able to do it exactly like this, a little too closed, a little too restricted. There is a place in between. Where is that? It's in your knowledge of functional anatomy. That's where it is. Is my joint going to move the same as yours? Depends. Are you as mobile as I am in your joints? There's something there. Can I do the same thing that you can do? Depends. Have you had the same injuries I've had? So we want to get ourselves back to restored optimal function. So we need to know where that is. And we get to work with the person as they are in this moment and listen to the body because it will tell you if it's ready for what's next. So the listening skills for the body instead of listening to our own inner chatter is where I was going with all of this. Done. Okay, great. All right, what's coming up for you guys? I love that you're interacting with me and like, yeah, I totally get it. What are you hearing now? Like what, if you'd be willing, what's your inner dialogue now about the work that you do or what you heard today? And it's normal to come into training and kind of like assess, like, did I do that with that client? Or I don't really like what she's saying. It completely conflicts with something else I heard some other trainer just tell me. And now I really don't know what the truth is. What's coming up for you?
Can I share just a quick little story? I don't know if it will ever help. I always like to think that maybe a story might some experience might help somebody kind of go do an aha, or that's interesting. I did have a yoga student, she's trying to be a teacher, actually come to me in a PT realm outside of the teaching because she was having pain. And she did come to me with some interesting items. But again, like I said the other day on the chat, 2 ears, 1 mouth. Need to listen more than some of the PTs I've worked with that they just don't listen. You need to listen to what the person is saying. You need to listen physically with your ears. You need to shut your mouth. And then you need to touch, like, listen to their body, like you said, 2 different entities, right? She went into a story about what was, this is where I have pain physically. Let me physically tell you what I'm feeling. And then I said, so tell me about you. Tell me about your life. Tell me about, what's gone on with you. By the end of that story, it became very quickly to a death of a child. Lots of deep-seated trauma. And I said, okay, now we're finding out what's really, now we're getting a little deeper. We can get a little deeper. I can't just put my hands on you and go, I feel this, you have trauma. But being able to listen a little bit, like verbally, and then with the body itself, and listen to her body was telling me, no way. You're not going to be able to just fix me. Click of the fingers. So I know that sounds kind of convoluted there. It's kind of all over the place, but I really like the way you say listen and take that in, and the energy is just so important. And of course, bringing that confidence, obviously, when you touch somebody, if you're going to be doing something manual over, just listening, just listen. And because there are some things that I've seen so many PTs just not listen, and they show up with the checkbox. I did my you have knee pain, I'm going straight to the knee. This is what I'm doing. Oh my goodness, I do not like that kind of practice. I'm about listen to them. What are they saying? What can't they do as an activity of daily living? What's a functional movement that they can't do? And all you're doing is talking about the pain of the one spot, the knee. So listening to what they have to say and what they're doing with their daily activity, and maybe how they're affected through that in their own personal story, their journey, that perhaps, as an example, I'm using a scenario of this lovely young lady of a trauma that was holding her back. So, and I know that gets very deep into something else, but I think listening and like you said, there are lots of other things. Read that energy, and just, again, the body is going to be separate of just listening and feeling that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I don't know if that made any sense to anybody.
Yeah, actually, we did talk about a case study a couple of weeks back before you were here with us, Alexis. And similarly, there was a client of mine also with a death of a child, and it shows up differently. And that was the start of our talk that day about the Venn diagram, knowing that you're working a whole being. And then we've also talked about partnering. There's a time to refer out. It's not your lane. And I would take it one thing I heard you say, Alexis, that I would really take into consideration for us is that saying to somebody, even in our own mind space or out loud, you have trauma, is just like saying you have scoliosis or you have a herniated disc. It's not in our realm to diagnose. And that actually is favorable, because as soon as we label someone with a diagnosis, it's a fixed statement. It's a fixed energy, especially when it's trauma, because then we fix the energy that's trapped, right? So we want to use our words and our skill set as practitioners to evolve them or restore them, whatever direction they get to go in. Most of the time it's both. And so as we heard in the summit, we also can re-traumatize someone by talking about their trauma and triggering them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so we get to figure out, where are we? And some of that is that competence, right? Like I am an energy worker as well. I've done just as much training in Eastern anatomy as I have in Western anatomy. And so I might take that on. for the client's moment, which is how I navigated that with the client I used as an example in our training. And if other practitioners are not energy workers, it's just like if they're not yoga teachers, but they're massage therapists. It doesn't mean you're failing because you're not the other. It just means to be aware enough to recognize what's needed for this person. And if that is that they get to come and talk for an hour, not because you're a talk therapist, but they get to talk so that you could discover together what the source is, and then refer them to a really qualified practitioner who does something very different than you, you've still served them deeply.
Yeah. It was an aha moment. I verbally did not diagnose. In my brain, I went, aha. Now I know the energy I'm getting. Now I know. I didn't put it verbally back to her. I went, just kind of, I let her talk, which was a lot. It started to flow. She trusted me. She's trusted me, and we got to that place, and then I referred her out.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Yeah. And I would say, we could use any case study for a really long time. Like I was saying that at the beginning of our time here together, the practitioners who are just about to graduate, we're working case studies, and we can just keep diving, and there's so much to uncover in a case study. And so this particular case study and the type that you're bringing up for us, Alexis, we could dive for a while down, sometimes touch is the right thing for someone who presents with that part of their Venn diagram very imbalanced. But what kind of touch? Why did the body say no to one touch, and why would it say yes to another? Because one kind of touch might be provocative, asking it to do something, and it's saying, no, I want to receive. Or maybe touch isn't what they need. Like you mentioned, that was your assessment when you were working and with that particular client, and all clients are different. So it's not that just because someone comes in with that part of their Venn diagram really lit up in need that we can't touch them. It depends. Sometimes touch is the exact thing that melts a person's guard to get them to open so we can make access to the tissues. And sometimes it's absolutely not what's needed. And that is a skill of listening. We got to come like locked and loaded with all of this knowledge about what it could be, and then listen in the moment instead of, as you said, enforcing a checklist. In fact, I was going to be a physical therapist or I wasn't going to be a physical therapist. Let's just be super clear. It was suggested to me that I look at physical therapy, and I was getting my undergraduate degree, and I didn't really resonate with any of the degrees. And so, people were fretting like, oh my God, she's going to graduate with a degree that, is nothing. They're all something, by the way, because they teach you how to think differently. But, the old adage of what are you going to do with an English degree or whatever it is. And so I did, I took the advice and I went into the physical therapy department, and I really spent some time there. I had never at that point received physical therapy for myself, so I wasn't really sure what I was going into. And that checkbox that you mentioned, Alexis, that's where I get that from. The experience of all the times I openly went into the physical therapy department in exploration felt like, this is how I've described it in the past, like the physical therapist stands over here with a clipboard writing things down, and you're over there doing something, and hopefully it works. And I know that that's super underestimating the value that physical therapy provides. And it's not meant to throw physical therapy under the bus at all. That's why I had physical therapists at my summit last week. The difference, though, is what you want to do with the training that you have and whether it resonates with you. So physical therapy is amazing. It didn't resonate with me. I like to be a little more creative and holistic and out of the box and head to toe and side to side and up and down and energy and manual and all the things together. And that's not physical therapy. Physical therapy is very clear in its lane. It goes deep down in that lane, which a lot of people thoroughly enjoy, and its value is high. But how you want to work also really matters. And then the clients that come to you want what you're offering. So you get to be super clear. We all get to be super clear about what it is that we're offering and not switch it up so much. That's back to the trying to be liked or not confident of the value that you offer. Anyway, that's starting to get down into a slightly different conversation, but it's still about listening to your own resonance, and then communicating that clearly without having to overtalk it. Can you just be you, like be real, be you, be in the room.
Absolutely.
So good. Okay, we have time for probably one more question. Is anybody else aching with a question? Anybody have a question I can support you with? Nothing's in the chat, so that's okay too. All right, if there's no other questions, sometimes it's just a good day to just like drink it all in and see what comes up. That's okay too. We are, for those of you who are not yet registered, you are certainly welcome to join us in our boot camp tomorrow. I've called it a masterclass because I'm just used to teaching masterclasses, but I really deliberately named this one as a boot camp because we're going to do some heavy lifting tomorrow. So you're welcome to come, and my invitation is to come with an open mind, and maybe even with the expectation that you'll be rattled a little bit, which I know I sound like contradicting myself because that is not how to teach to the nervous system. What I'm not going to do is force feed you, but I am going to bring in some higher level, if you will, way after school training, ways of thinking, way after school training, ways of thinking, and how I figured out what I do with all this knowledge and how do I create results with that. And then what was the body telling me that I didn't learn in school because I wasn't tinkering in this way. So that's the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about tomorrow. And that's why it's a boot camp. Okay. And Alexis is ready to be rattled. Cool. I'm so glad. So I'm looking forward to seeing you guys all tomorrow. We start at 11 Eastern, and we will also be right back here, same time, same channel, next week for Tuesday training. I have to tell you though, question actually. Oh yeah, let me ask you this question while we're here live. Next week, I am free until 12:30 Eastern instead of 1 Eastern. So question, would you like to come a half hour earlier and have a full hour, or would you rather have just a half hour and same start time at noon? We get to vote while we're here. Anybody?
I'm open for whatever.
Open.
Yeah,
Lori?
I can start earlier.
Sweet.
Yeah,
Earlier works. Okay, babes, let's look at you. You know what I'm hearing? Because I'm listening. I'm hearing, I would like more, please, not less.
We would like the full hour.
We would like the full hour. So you got it. So next week we're 11:30 Eastern as our start time. More, please. You got it. I love it. I love it. I'm happy to be in service this way. More, please. 11:30 Eastern next Tuesday for our Tuesday training. Okay. And then we'll be back to the noon spot. Okay. So thanks for your flexibility. Thanks for using your voice and letting me know everybody's vote matters. I'll see you guys tomorrow in the boot camp and next week for Tuesday training.